The Florida chapters of two national organizations have filed suit against Florida's Secretary of State, the League of Women Voters of Florida, and the Florida State Conference of the NAACP, suing over Florida's voter registration form, which they say violates federal law.
Investigator Lewis Bolden is digging into the lawsuit. And Lewis, this comes after the state's election police arrested 20 people, including some here in Central Florida, for voting illegally.
That's right. It sure does, Julie. Good morning. The lawsuit specifically mentions people with felony convictions who were arrested after being allowed to register to vote and being sent voter registration cards. The lawsuit alleges Florida's voter registration application violates the National Voter Registration Act of 1993.
Today we celebrate our noble tradition by signing into law our newest civil rights law, the National Voter Registration Act of 1993.
In 1993, when President Clinton signed the National Voter Registration Act, also known as the Motor Voter Law, Becky Kane, then president of the League of Women Voters, was standing with him, along with the executive director of the NAACP, Benjamin Chavez.
The NAACP, the League of Women Voters.
30 years later, the Florida chapters of both organizations are now suing Florida's Secretary of State, Cord Byrd, for allegedly violating the act.
The phraseology is very, very basic, very unclear.
Cecile Schoon is the president of the League of Women Voters of Florida.
The application is in the flow of what we consider voter suppression.
According to the lawsuit, the application fails to meet the National Voter Registration Act's basic minimum standards for informing potential voters about Florida's complicated eligibility requirements, particularly when it comes to those with felony convictions.
People don't understand what they should do.
Florida's voter registration application asks potential voters to affirm, "I am not a convicted felon," or "if I am, my right to vote has been restored." Florida's voter registration application was enacted in 2012, but in 2018, voters overwhelmingly passed Amendment 4, which automatically restored the rights of most felons. But the application does not specify that for most felonies in Florida, returning citizens' rights are automatically restored upon completion of all terms of their sentence, and does not specify that returning citizens convicted of murder or felony sex offenses can only have their rights restored through the clemency process, according to the lawsuit.
So having the application state more specifically what needs to be done and where you go to get those answers would be much better.
The lawsuit points to the arrests of people with felony convictions who were allowed to register to vote and received an official voter information card, which constitutes notice of approval of registration according to the lawsuit. Is your concern that if this application is not cleared up, that more people could end up in this situation?
Absolutely.
Now, Cord Byrd, Florida Secretary of State, filed a motion asking the court to dismiss the lawsuit, saying Florida's voter registration application is sufficient. As soon as the court rules, of course, we will let you know. And you guys, one of the most interesting points of this lawsuit is that the voter application form that we use now went into effect in 2012. But in 2018, we had a major development. That's when Amendment 4 was passed. And after Amendment 4 passed, there was a lot of confusion. There's still a lot of confusion about how people with convicted felons can find out whether their rights have been restored, whether they have paid all of their fees. There is not one central database. That was a question you had for me the other day, Bridget. And there's not one central database where people can do it. Then it gets even more complicated if you're someone who has felonies in different counties. You have to go to each county to figure out if all of your debts have been satisfied. So it is complicated.
Well, even just watching you break it down so clearly in that story, it's still confusing. And, you know, this confusion, as you've been covering for months, has had such a negative impact on so many people's lives who thought they were good to go.
Right. It has led to people being arrested and prosecuted. And we have seen how those arrests have affected people's lives. You know, I've talked to Peter Washington many times, who lost his job over this. So it's, you know, a lot of people think it is all politically motivated, but for those people who were arrested, it is very serious.
So if you're not sure, you have a record, you're not sure, what's the best or first call you should make or first website you should go to?
You should probably go to, if you are a person who has a felony conviction, you should first start with the county where you got that conviction and go through the court records to make sure there are no outstanding fines. A lot of people believe that the state should make it easier and have an office dedicated to helping people figure these things out, but so far, we don't.
All right. Thank you, Lewis, for that update.
No problem.